Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 129. This is a podcast about the Division franchise. We'll just go with that now. It's community, news, speculation, and updates. I am Bond Diesel. I do Division stuff, such as this podcast, Twitch streams, and YouTube videos, mostly about Division, or whatever I feel like doing. Please take a moment to subscribe and to rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen. This week, in this episode, we will talk about the State of the Game recap, Series X a week later, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Division 2 Season 3 thoughts, Division 3 speculation room, and more. I do want to thank this month's Patreon supporters, Hassan, Christian, Darren, Tim, PK, Dale, and our newest patron, Ron. Just a heads up, there will not be, at least for the time being, any new ads or anything on this podcast. Therefore, if you would like to support the podcast and help me kind of keep it going and keep on upgrading the stuff, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/BondDiesel. I am very open to ideas and requests for content on there. I just need to hear from you. So if you can support, it does help me justify the time I spend on my various bits of content. And I would like to actually increase those things. So if you can, great. If not, I totally get it. Okay, so State of the Game recap. This week we had Hamish, Johan, and Mackenzie. This was mostly a recap of the PTS and a talk of what is coming on the Wave 2 of the PTS. Wave 1 wrapped up today, which is Wednesday. Wave 2 starts on November 27th. They did address some thoughts on the optimization station costing too much and pointed out that the materials you're using, all of the sources aren't available in the PTS because the Season 4 is not active in the PTS. So they feel like it's in a pretty good spot, but they will adjust as needed. They talked about the Bighorn Exotic getting a talent adjustment. The PDR, the new gun that's coming, which has a exotic and a named version, is getting a damage buff to bring it in line with some of the other guns. The capacitor, which is the exotic for the PDR, is also getting a magazine size buff. The Scorpio exotic shotgun was nerfed a bit for PvE because they felt like it essentially was making PvE completely trivial, because even with like rogues and stuff, you could just lock them down and murder them. And they showed off what the PvP talent variations will look like for the Scorpio and PvP zones, to show that it is still very powerful. But in the PTS, people were basically able to like stun lock everyone with it, especially if a whole group was using it. So still powerful, but not as cheesy. They showed that there will be 16 loadout spots for the gear loadouts and apparel loadouts when TU12 comes out, which I think is a increase of 4. I think there's currently 12. And they talked about changing the damage on the shrapnel mod for the new one, because the damage it was doing is way more than other sources of explosive damage. People did ask about PvP changes. They denied having any significant ones other than the Scorpio talent changes. Okay, my thoughts on this State of the Game. It was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what I expected. I actually didn't even live tweet this one because I kind of figured it was pointless. To be totally honest, I just didn't see any point in doing it, because this was mostly what I expected. The changes they're making seem fine. I'm just kind of excited to mess around with some of the new gear and some of the new weapons, especially the the PDR, its named version, and the exotic, because it should technically, in theory, fit perfectly into my skill build that I mostly use, but maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. So there's that. Jumping into some gaming news, I was going to talk a bit about the Series X a week later. So I've had my Series X for a week and a day now. I've gotten quite a bit of playing time in on it, mostly Division 2. I did play a little bit of State of Decay, Gears, Apex, Call of Duty. I've messed around a little bit. I've dabbled. I even played some Madden, which I haven't played that in many years. All stuff off of EA Play and Game Pass. It's really cool, man. There's a funny kind of meme going around right now, saying like, hey, sorry if I haven't responded to your text. My loading times are instant now, so I don't have time. And it's really funny, but it's so true that it used to be a big, the 90, 120, 180 seconds it would take for things to load. I would normally grab my phone, respond to text, or check out, Twitter real quick and respond to anything quickly on there. And it's just not there anymore. It's really nuts. It's wild. The loading time is definitely the most next gen thing I've seen so far. Playing a few games at 60 FPS that I've previously only played at 30 or less definitely is noticeable as well. But it's those loading times, man. It's really cool. Seeing a lot of the reviews and stuff, it's really interesting how both for the PlayStation and the Xbox, in my opinion, when you review hardware, you can't hold software against it. That may be a very Xbot or biased point of view, but I think maybe you can factor it in or commentate on it. But this Series X is in my opinion, a 10 out of 10 console. And I'm sure the PS5 is as well. But it seems like it's getting knocked because of its lack of exclusive games. Now, I would argue that even PlayStation right now should be knocked for the same thing, maybe a little bit less. But you can't really tell me. Godfall's getting terrible reviews. That game looks awful. Miles Morales, it is a standalone DLC. It's a really good one. It sounds like. I haven't played it, obviously, but it's not a sequel, and that's okay. But that's kind of how it's being treated. And then Demon Souls, it's a remake of a highly, highly niche game. Like, most people don't want to play that game. It'll sell a few million copies and it'll do really well, but I'm, from both sides, if both systems are 10 out of 10s, and you're going to knock them for their games, then maybe you knock, the Xbox a half point more than the PlayStation. But from a hardware point of view, the PlayStation 5 and the Series X just seem incredible. I've been extremely happy with it. My biggest gripe is right now, and in a year, a year from now, this complaint won't be around. But there's not very much that rewards you for having it already, especially for the games I play the most, namely The Division. So I really enjoy it. I know that the Series X launched everywhere already. I know that people in other territories are still waiting for the PS5s. I think are getting delivered think I'm pretty sure. So no matter which system you have, I really hope you enjoy it and don't have any issues. I think it's exciting today, but it's going to pay off in 2 years, no matter which system you get. I'm a big proponent of the cross-gen games, and I do think it's cool that they're doing that to not leave the 150 plus million customers behind with the old systems. But these games aren't going to, these systems aren't going to show their real muscle until they're making games just for them. It's a simple fact. I've even gotten to talk to some game devs about it, and they're like, once the PS5 and the Series X are our baseline, the things we're going to be able to do with games and lighting and sound and AI and map size and map density and animations and all of that stuff, like the ray tracing stuff isn't just for reflections. It can be used with sound, and it can even be used with AI. So I'm under the impression that there's even a potential where the AI can use ray tracing because it can shoot rays and gather data from that. And in theory, you could have a situation where AI could spot your character in mirrors. So, like, say there's a wall and there's a mirror across from the wall, and you're on one side and your enemy is on the other. In theory, that ray tracing could be used where not only, you know, the enemy can't just see what they immediately see, but in theory, if the mirror is coded correctly, in theory the AI could look at the mirror and see you because of ray tracing, because of the rays being shot out, and they could use that to be able to detect you around corners, realistically. It's just super cool, and similar stuff can be done with sound and all that. So Series X is super cool. I'm sure the PS5 is as well, but I really can't wait for like a year or 2 years from now when we start seeing stuff that's like fully taking advantage of it, maybe even further out. Talking about games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So I did pre-order it. I did want something that was going to be next gen optimized already, and like it's fine. It just what I like about it is I do appreciate that, because I played Origins and Odyssey and I really liked both of them. They're just so damn long, and Valhalla is even longer. Like, that sucks. Like, I mean, I just don't have the energy to spend 60 plus hours in these games anymore. Not all games. I'm happy to do that in a lot of games, but in the Assassin's Creed games, especially, Valhalla feels so similar to Odyssey. I can't do it. I just can't. And there's so many little things, like it's so buggy as expected, you know. And what's interesting is this time in Odyssey, Alexios was kind of like a meathead dumb character, and Cassandra was the one that most people seem to appreciate more. Even just the voice acting was better, and it's really interesting. I messed around with both characters in Valhalla and found it to be the opposite this time. The male Eivor has a really cool vocal performance. It's really interesting, and he sounds really good. The lines are delivered well, and the woman Eivor, just, it sounds like someone who has like a moderately deep voice for like a woman, which is cool. Who's making her voice like 4 times deeper on purpose. It's so cringy, and that's fine if you prefer playing as that. That's great. But I did it for like a few minutes and had to switch back, because in every cutscene it was just like, oh my god, this is so like awkward, because it felt so fake. But the game, I don't know, it's so weird because like its environment looks pretty good. I just keep hearing people just absolutely just fall over themselves about how great it looks, and it like kind of doesn't. The animations are weird. The combat feels really mushy and button mashy. It doesn't feel good. It's really weird, because if you pay too much attention, you'll notice that like a lot of the textures and stuff look awful, like look really bad, in the environmental ones, and even on the characters. Like, let's get into something. And this applies for like Division and Ghost Recon and all of their like more modern games. I don't know, they just need to stop putting beards on characters, or hair even, because they look so bad. Like the hair, and especially the beards on all of these characters, just look god awful. It looks like someone, you know, like Elmer's glued plastic hair to people's faces. It just looks so awful. And the characters like are fine. The lip syncing is really weird, and it's like, it really, at least it takes me out of it a lot when in the cutscenes, where like it's just not fluid. Like there's a very much a mannequin moving their mouth kind of thing to it. It's really odd, and I really expected more, because I even feel like some of the older games that they had like did this better, or like maybe there's even a point where like I think graphics have gotten to a point where it's easier and maybe it's more immersive to not do CGI cutscenes anymore, to do like in-game cinematics using in-game models and stuff like that, which is fine. But man, they look awful in a lot of cases, and I've really found it interesting. I feel like the only person who feels that way. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, because it seems like no one else really has an issue with the way this game looks. I think it looks really kind of bad, at least for what I'm expecting. So yeah, in the story, like, it seems fine. Like, they've definitely tried to actually put some Assassin's Creed into this game, as where Origins and Odyssey, it was just kind of dabbled. It was almost it was just kind of like a, oh, by the way, kind of thing almost. Where this one, it really does feel like it's, you're an assassin, or you get the introduction to the characters from the guild and stuff like that. But it does still kind of just feel like it's been pasted on. What this game feels like to me is it's just another Ubisoft open world RPG third person game with Assassin's Creed stuff slapped onto it. Like, it's a pretty cool Viking game with Assassin's Creed slapped onto it. And I don't know, I'm sure I'll play more of it. I've only gotten a few hours in, but I don't know. I wish I could get a refund, if I have to be totally honest. I think it's a game worth buying if you're really into this stuff, if you know what you're getting into. But I know that I'm not feeling it. I'm not personally into it. So I give it kind of a big old meh on the rating scale. It's fine if you disagree with me. I think maybe I went into it with the wrong expectations or something. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm not very impressed. Either way, it's going to get supported like crazy. They're going to have tons of DLC, tons of add-on stuff, tons of stuff that you can buy. So if you want to get into it, there's going to be plenty there. But if it was like a 25, 30 hour story, I would probably push through and just enjoy it. But knowing that people at minimum are spending 50, 55, 60 plus hours of just straight trying to beat the story, and it's taking them that long, yeah, I don't like it that much. So that's just me. The final kind of gaming topic here was we did get to see yesterday on Tuesday some Cyberpunk Xbox footage and kind of a surprise Night City Wire thing or whatever it's called. So I watched it a bit. They showed kind of going back and forth 1X and Series X footage. Cyberpunk it appears they have a deal with Xbox, so they're going to highlight it for the most part. The 1X looked okay. It kind of looked what you expected. I would even say maybe it looked better than I expected it would. It's kind of funny because everyone's given them a pass for this game not working very well on the old systems. But the thing you have to keep in mind that they started developing this game shortly before the new systems came out, or the old systems before they came out in 2012, 13. So they developed this game for at least a few years with full intent of putting it on the old systems. And so if a few years ago they decided to step it up and really push for it to be a more next gen experience, that's fine. But they had to have known that they were going to have these issues. That's why all of these delays, and especially this last one where they specifically blame the old systems, that's fine. I'm sure that there was an issue, but it does kind of make me tilt my head a bit and be I mean, you guys knew what you're developing for. It's not like this was new. You guys have known for a very long time what the expectation is, but that's fine. It looked okay. The Series X version it wasn't the quote unquote next gen version, but it still looked really good. You could definitely tell a big difference. This game, a concern I've had about it ever since the first big trailer they showed, the quote unquote gameplay. I mean, it was all obviously scripted. Is it's what I actually didn't like about The Witcher either, is the combat sucked in The Witcher. I hate playing that game. I understand it's got a great story and people love it, and it's some people's favorite games of the generation. I think it blows because I think the controls suck. I hate the combat. I'm not into that world anyways. That might also be why I don't like Valhalla. But I've had concerns about their combat, especially because they don't do shooty games, and having good gunplay is hard. There's not very many companies who do it consistently well, like Activision does and Bungie. and that's about as long as that list gets. And you can only tell so much from a trailer, and the only combat they showed was with the One X, not the Series X, but it just looked clunky and it just looked bad. So now, obviously, with that game, even if the combat sucks, it's about the narrative, it's about the storytelling, it's about a lot more than the combat, and that's fine. I fully plan on playing Cyberpunk, but I really worry that for people like me who are probably going to try to do kind of like a mercenary, rootin' tootin' shooting, character. I'm after seeing that that preview, it worries me a bit that the gunplay is gonna suck. At least it's gonna look nice, I guess. But yeah, so we'll see. They did announce that, or they mentioned that while there will not be a next gen patch for the game yet, that it will come in 2021. So that kind of blows, because I know someone like me is most likely going to play that game as much as I want to play it this year or even early next year. Just because they drop a next gen patch, I mean, I may pop back in and be like, oh wow, this does look great, and then not go back. It does kind of depend on how the game is going to be. I think the problem is, I think there's a lot of people expecting this game to be this like endlessly playable, endless content type of game, and I bet it's not. In fact, I bet it's relatively limited. And so I'm just kind of curious to how that's going to be handled. So we will see. Okay, so moving to some Division 2 stuff. So this will be kind of spoilery. So if you haven't finished the Manhunt for Season 3 yet, and if you haven't, or if you don't want to know what happens, then I guess thanks for listening, or you can skip to the listener questions or the Division 3 part here in a few minutes. The Season 3, so again, the kind of bummer part of it is, with the 4 rogue agents that you hunt over the couple months, you get like some indication of some story and stuff, but like this time, and even in the other seasons, the 4 rogue agents it's mostly the voice recordings and stuff you hear are just them bickering with the manhunt target in some capacity, or talking to them about logistics. So I didn't really find anything that interesting. I did find Dust, I think was last week. She was great. I think her voice acting and her lines were like some of my favorite ones from any of the manhunts. So yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. But they kind of were what they were, and it's the first couple manhunts, redoing all of that stuff didn't feel too bad, but now we're getting to a point where we're starting to have to play missions and stuff to get these manhunt targets that we've been playing for 2 years almost, and have played them a lot. And I don't really have any suggestions other than if they just make new content, which that's probably not going to happen. It's getting to a point where this final season is probably going to feel like kind of rough. My biggest issue with this whole manhunt thing in general is the first 2 manhunts really didn't give us any really interesting information, just a little bit of background stuff, I guess. The Season 3 has definitely moved the story forward, which is great. And it's definitely set up Season 4 in a big way, which I'll talk about. But I understand why they're spread out so much, and especially as we see the way the calendar is working out now, it seems like it's conveniently Season 4 is going to end around the 2-year anniversary of Division 2. I'm still predicting that will come with a announcement of Division 3 probably coming in 2022, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this almost kind of feels like the shields in a way, if you remember from Division 1, while we waited for Division 2. Obviously this stuff is way more interesting and exciting than some of those shields were pretty basic, but it just feels like it's so artificially spread out that like between each manhunt target, like I almost feel like even if they were just like spread out, like if they were like 2 weeks apart instead of 3 or something, it would just feel a bit better. I will say like the pattern of getting a new target, playing through and killing them for week 1, then doing the first week of the league in week 2, and then the second week of the league in league 3, like it's fine. It affords a few hours of gameplay, which is what I think they're really trying to do. But man, I wish I could just kind of play them all back to back, even if it meant I just didn't have any more content for a year and a half. But it's fine. Now for the Schaefer mission specifically, this is where the spoilers definitely come in. It takes place at the second Coney Island mission with the haunted house, and it's cool. A bit shorter than the first two. I still think that first was it Tidal Basin mission, I still think that was the coolest one. Maybe that was the second one, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, with Hornet, I still think that was my favorite like final manhunt mission. But they've been nice. The Schaefer one gets interesting because it's one of the first times that we see the hunter or a hunter specifically like as part of the story. We got that side mission when Division 2 first came out where they did kind of dip them in a little bit, and then after that you start getting stalked by them, but for whatever reason you can't freaking fight them. And then we got all of the puzzle hunters, which honestly I think sucks. If I have a Division 3 request now, you can do the puzzle hunters if you want, for the people who like that shit. But please give us another way to fight the hunters, and not at the end of a 100 floor grind fest like the summit. There's got to be another way to, we've got to have some type of underground experience. Please, 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 please. But this Schaefer mission at Coney Island was pretty interesting. So you get onto the island, you start fighting through Rikers who are there to help Schaefer. And then you run into a bunch of dead ones, and you even see the hunter a couple times, and he's leaving these shrapnel traps around, which is actually pretty cool. I thought that was interesting. There's a goofy moment where the hunter is in the haunted house, and you go through a door, and he's laying on one of the casket things, and he like sits up like Dracula, and then he puffs off in a puff of smoke. Okay. Like that, it's a bit much. I get it, they're kind of tormenting us, they're kind of teasing us and playing with us, that's fine, but I found it kind of cheesy. I didn't really like it that much. But there does come a point in one of the carnival areas where you actually face off with the hunter, who's been appearing at all of the manhunt missions, or all of the targets, the 4 rogues, and he normally would disappear before doing anything really, but this time he doesn't. This time he's there to fight you and kill you. And you find that he is in communication with Schaefer. And so what's interesting about it is Schaefer mentions once or twice that he's on an unsecured line, and he's done it a few times, like when he's talking to Fei Lao and stuff. So when he talks to the hunters respond and like is like garbled, like almost growling sound. So I've seen some people speculate that he's like, he's like a genetic experiment or something like that. He can't talk. I actually think his comms are protected, encrypted in some capacity, so that's why you can't hear him. But he is still communicating with Schaefer by talking to him. He's not growling, he's not an animal. I will say during the fight though, he does like kind of make some of those same noises, so maybe I'm wrong. He even like laughs at you, it's kind of creepy. Or he'll like moan like when he gets hurt and stuff. It's kind of interesting. I don't think that they've done that before. So my issue is that I've been playing this on challenging. I've played through the mission a few times now, and I have a the same build I used to murder a bunch of the hunters when I was doing them all, he just wrecks my shit, man. He just absolutely dominates me. And I haven't tried to do it with a group yet, but I think I'll need to in order to kill him. He does drop a mask, that golden skull mask that you can get. If you do die, you respawn and the hunter's gone and he's replaced by a bunch of Rikers, a couple heavies, and a bunch of people you have to kill to continue the mission. So after you get past that part, you move on, you kill a bunch more people, and then you get to Schaefer. And what was really interesting about the final fight with him is you fight, I think, 4 of his BTSU operatives, and their actual characters aren't named. Like when you look at them, they're just grenadiers in this like kind of Wyvern looking armor. When you see Wyvern in Untitled Basin, it's kind of bulky, like kind of crazy looking armor. Same as Schaefer, and they all have dialogue, like unique dialogue, and they're actually kind of funny. And even Schaefer kind of throws out a few good quips himself. But the real twist to all of this is when you kill all of them, including Schaefer, Kelso comes over the comms and says, hey, he's still got a pulse. I'm sending a team to come evac him, to collect him. He's just been, it's just a nick. Now, if you go up and look at his player model, he's super dead. But I assume that's they just didn't add like I almost wish they would have done like a down state with Schaefer. The way that like when an agent gets down, they sit like on 3 hands on one of their hands and their knees, and they're holding their chest or whatever. I wish they would have just done that to make it a little more immersive. Maybe they worried people would keep trying to shoot him or something. I don't know. But so what this tells us, and which was not in the leaks, is that Schaefer he's not dead. And that definitely has a lot of implications, I think, to the future. That means that, the whole idea story wise is that they're taking him back as like a prisoner. And the only reason you really do that is to try to get information. And he has information on Black Tusk. He has information on Fei Lao. He has information on hunters, because he obviously knows how to work with these hunters. Not to mention that at some point in this mission as well, we get introduced to, I think it was Michaela Sokolova. We don't really know who she is exactly. I haven't gotten all 4 of the comms yet. You have to play this mission 4 times for Schaefer to drop all 4 of the comms. So I assume maybe it's explained more. But if I remember correctly, she is part of like the board for Black Tusk. She's not like the boss. There's someone else mysterious who's still like the super boss. But she is introduced, and it does start to bring along like, okay, we have the Sokolov, armor brand set. Does she have something to do with the hunter? This goes back to all those theories that some people had about hunters being like Russian operatives or something like that. I still don't think so. I still think they're just like a plan B to Shade, but we'll see. But yeah, Bardon still being alive is really interesting, and the fact that they didn't kill him. It also makes it interesting that here's super spoilers. Skip for a minute or two if you don't want season 4 info. But it's the fact that we're supposed to leave Faye alive too. That she's supposed to kill the president and then bounce. So I'd be really surprised if we have 2 manhunt targets in a row that get away or who we don't kill. So we'll see. The reason I think it's interesting is I think this does set up a season 4 really well, with Fei Lao being the main target. I am curious too if the leaks are true about that final mission with her, which should take place at the camp. I always call it Camp David, White Oak or whatever it's called in the game. It's the retreat for the president, and I'm excited for that. The twist of Schaefer not being dead, I thought was a big deal. So I don't really know. The problem is that now with TU12, now we have possession of Schaefer and Vitali, but Vitali has been nowhere to be found since TU9 or whatever. Like there's still no one working on that bioreactor. And what I'm curious about is that if this TU12 really is the end of the content, basically, it just makes me wonder, like, are we really gonna wait until Division 3 to do something with that bioreactor? Are we really gonna wait until Division 3 to do something with Vitali? Are we really gonna wait till Division 3 to do, to wrap up? It wouldn't surprise me if we are, but just there's so many storylines that you would think they would want to wrap up before they would move to another game, and technically could potentially to the end of the series. But we'll see. The Division has never been a franchise that's been very good at wrapping up storylines with neat little bows. Okay, so with some Division 3 speculation room chitter chatter, there was nothing really big this week. I did notice a few more job listings for an unannounced project through the massive Malmo. Every time I mention it, there's always someone who's like, "Oh, I bet it's just for Avatar." I mean, it's not. The Avatar listings are very clearly marked. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's like 20 of them or something. So it's not Avatar. They're obviously working on a second project. I think it's just kind of easy to assume it's a Division 3 because that's, Avatar and Division are their two main IPs. Maybe they would add a third IP or drop Division entirely. I really doubt it, especially after reading that David Pofelt book. It really seems like Division is very core to Massive. I've even seen people say like, "Oh, I hope another company does Division and stuff eventually." That's not going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised even if Massive has some type of control or ownership over the Division, because they were considering and began developing the idea before they even got purchased by Ubisoft. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But more job listings, if you read through them, it seems like they're being a little bit more careful with their wording than they were with that first posting I talked about and made a video about. There are a few references to like action games and stuff like that, different factions, NPC behavior. The jobs that they're hiring for right now span over the entirety of game development, all the way from AI to rigging, like the animations and stuff, to environmental design, to all kinds. So they're obviously ramping up and working hard on something big. But it's we'll have to wait and see. And then with the ending of season 3, I think it definitely seems like they're coming to a natural conclusion of some type. We've talked a bit in different podcasts about the supposed leaked ending of season 4, that manhunt, and I've speculated what I think would happen in a Division 3. So whether or not those leaks were true, which so far they pretty much have been, or if they decide to do something different, I don't expect that. The Division 3 watch is still patient, but I am keeping an eye out. So I promise I will talk about stuff on here, and I will actually mention, if you're already saying like, but Red Storm did a thing this week, I'll talk about that in a moment. So jumping into some listener questions, you can ask your own questions either on my Discord, on my Twitter. You can ask in the YouTube comments if you want, or you can email me. It's bondieseltwitch@gmail.com. I have 3 questions this week. So the first one is from Pizza Morgue, and they say, with high-profile bombs like Anthem and Avengers, and even the newer Destiny 2 expansions not being the critical darlings they once were, it seems like the live service bubble is bursting. Do you think they will take notice of this in Division 3 and maybe go for a more Gearbox-style approach of a 20 to 30-hour loot-driven campaign with DLC expansions designed to be played with just a couple of friends rather than the loot treadmill of live service model? Or do you think they're focused on being a live service? So I would say, from conversations I've had and just my own observations, I think that the looter shooter genre, it tried to expand big time. You had Destiny, and then you had like Borderlands, which is kind of its own thing a little bit because it's a single player game or a co-op game, not PvP. But you had, Division, Anthem, Avengers. Now you have even games like Godfall and stuff. And it's just, the problem is with the thing about Destiny is that Bungie is, I've talked about it before. They are their own entity, so they can do whatever they want, and they are huge. They are very, very, very large. And so while I know that they are working on another project right now, they've talked about having a second IP. I'm sure that they are still highly focused with, over 1,000 people probably just working on Destiny. And that's what you have to do for these live games to succeed. You have to pump out big, impressive content often. And here's the thing, they do it the best. Destiny absolutely does the best content. They have the only okay PvP in this genre. I forgot, I didn't mention Warframe. And they don't even do it perfectly. And they literally have easily the best setup of all of the looter shooters when it comes to manpower and resources and freedom and things like that. So what happens when you see games like Anthem or the Division, which I hesitate to put them in the same category, because while Division 2 and Division 1 are very much less than perfect, I still think they're good games and great games, in fact, where Anthem was just a bad game. I understand it had some good ideas and some good bones, but hey, we're sitting here all this time later waiting for Anthem 2.0 and it's still not happening. So until I'm proven wrong, I'm calling it a bad game. But these didn't come from small companies. I mean, the Division is an Ubisoft brand. Anthem is an EA brand, and it's made by BioWare. Like, I understand it was their B crew, but still. You're talking about the Avengers was made by whoever the hell it was made by. You would know, I don't off the top of my head, but they're no slouch. It's a big giant company that in theory should have all the resources to make a game like this work, and they didn't. They still couldn't. So I think that a lot of companies by now are starting to notice this live game thing, just, I'm sure it makes them a lot of money. So that's the only reason I hesitate to say that it's not going to continue, because even if it's not very successful critically, even though the Division 2 was pretty successful from a critical manner, but I digress. Even though it makes them so much money, I sometimes wonder if they could still make a ton of money, maybe even similar money, by doing kind of what you said, of going back to, trying to really work on because a Division game could have a 20-30 hour loot driven campaign, like you were saying, and then open up into a open world kind of ongoing experience at the end, but could have maybe a more focused story before that. And maybe the open world thing at the end isn't quite as big. I don't expect to see raids again in the Division franchise. Maybe they will. I hope they don't. I think the raids were a gigantic, huge waste of time and resources. I don't think they had the payoff at all. I would much rather see incursions or something like that. If you look at Division 1 and 2, you can identify a bunch of parts of the game that maybe could have been allocated differently and things like that. Like, I don't think the raid should have existed. I don't, as much as I rip on PvP in this game, I still would like for PvP to be a compelling thing to do. And controversially, I would just rather see them focus more on the conflict type of PvP, because through 2 games and many years of development, they've tried to make the DZ work and it just doesn't work. It was a cool idea. Their initial concept was great, but it basically has just shown pretty clearly that what they're going for isn't what the players want. And since neither side has relinquished their idea of what the DZ is, then maybe the DZ just needs to be something else entirely. I'm hoping that at some point someone can just have the balls to say, like, hey, this thing isn't obviously working the way that we're trying to make it work. Let's try something completely different. And that's what I'm hoping for. But when it comes to if the Division 3 is going to be another 10-12 hour story, that's then followed up by kind of menial updates every 3 months after that, as opposed to having a good 20-30 hour story followed up with big DLC expansions that are maybe every 6 or 9 months after that. I think whatever they do with Division 3, it's going to be significantly different than 2 or 1. I think that it would be, considering changes at Ubisoft, lessons that they've learned in the last, so many years with Division. I think whatever they do it's going to be drastic and it's going to be different. Whether they go all in on the RPG thing and make it borderline cartoony, whether they go the opposite direction and try to make it like more of like an older school Ghost Recon game because Breakpoint has decided to become a looter shooter too. Yeah, I know you can turn that shit off, but that's not how they design the game, and it's obviously meant to be a looter shooter. So back off. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something just very different. What that means, I have no idea. Am I gonna like it? No clue. We'll see. Dr. Deadlift had the second question on Discord. How about the new Scorpio exotic shotgun? It seems like it's going to be really strong in PvE and PvP with it causing status effects simply by landing shots. Do you think it will cause a meta shift? And also, did you enjoy the Bardon Schaefer mission? So yes, about the mission, I talked a bit about that already. I wish it was a bit longer. That mission, I kind of wondered why they used that mission as the location. I figured they would actually use the zoo, but I was wrong, because that Coney Island mission is fairly quick, and it still is. So yeah, so they used Roosevelt Island for the first one, and then Tidal Basin. And yeah, so that Coney Island mission was definitely out of place as not being a stronghold even. And then I think the final season is going to take place at Camp White Oak. So that's another, I mean, that's not a stronghold, but it's a long mission. So we'll have to see how that plays out. As for the Scorpio shotgun, I mean, from the updates they showed today, it seems like they're trying to take into consideration PvP. Unfortunately, they're kind of notorious for having good intentions but not the best results when it comes to balancing PvP. From PvE, it seems like they did recognize that the old version or the first version of Scorpio was way too powerful, so they are dialing that back per the state of the game today. It seems cool. I hate the design of it. I don't like those like I don't like the Eagle Bearer. I don't like the what's the snake rifle with no stock on it. I'm not into those super stylized weapons. So the Scorpio, it's not the most egregious thing, but it's still a bit much in my opinion. But from an actual use standpoint, it does seem really interesting. I just don't know if it really fits my style. But I could definitely see it causing some type of shift, at least in the PvE, meta. And depending on how well they adjust it and how good their adjustments are, it could become the PvP meta even after the changes they've talked about. The final question here is what I kind of mentioned before. Kamikaze Von Doom on Twitter mentioned Red Storm just updated their banner on Twitter back to a manhunt emblem. Is this a sign of year 3 PvP? Is this a sign of Division 3, which is more likely? So I will say it is interesting that they would do that because multiple significant devs I've seen at Red Storm have not only said that they are like you'll see in like developers profiles be like launched Division 1 and Division 2 or whatever games that they've done. There's a few devs with Division there's a few devs at Red Storm who have in giant capital letters, I am not working on the Division. So I took that for a long time as them, they're working on a different IP, because we know that they stopped working on Division over a year ago. I'm under the impression they basically stopped working on Division 2 right after it came out. I know that they were on some State of the Games and stuff, but if you remember, nothing really came of them. They were just some balancing talk. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at that point they basically were off the game. So what do I think that means? If I remember correctly, that picture that they posted is a close-up of a token. I believe it has the skull with the manhunt thing, and then it says TCTD, so Tom Clancy's The Division on the left side, and then on the right side, I think it says 2017, because if I remember correctly, that picture is of a token that Red Storm employees, some of them at least, received as like a token of gratitude for either releasing Division 1 or one of the big updates. I don't know if it was like 1.4 or 1.6 or something like that. But if I remember correctly, that was a thing that a few of the people who worked there even posted pictures of them showing, like, oh, hey, cool, we got this implement work today for the work we did or whatever. So like, I definitely don't think there's a year 3 of PvP. I'll get into that in a minute. But in theory, if there is a Division 3 being worked on, I highly doubt Massive is doing it alone. We know Division 2 was worked on by like 10 different studios. If they are cracking on Division 3 right now, there's a chance that maybe Red Storm did leave the project for the last year and a half to work on other stuff. And now they're back working on the Division franchise. It wouldn't be that surprising because they are so deeply connected. I've said for a long time that I think the Division is a spiritual successor to Future Soldier, Ghost Recon, which was the last Ghost Recon made by Red Storm. So it wouldn't surprise me if their fingerprints are coming back to the game. I highly doubt it has anything to do with Division 2. And I guess maybe I'll need to poke around to some of those Twitter profiles to see if any of those people are less aggressively distancing themselves from Division at this point. So I think it was just them posting a picture. I do think it's kind of weird for them to kind of reconnect themselves with the Division franchise. They also posted, Red Storm posted something about doing remote playtesting this week. And there's 3 games shown, and one of them is the Division. It was actually Division 1. So there's a chance that maybe they are doing some Division stuff again, because you would think that, they're at least suggesting that this playtesting could involve Division. So, and what would we even be playtesting at this point in like a beta stage? I would imagine it would most likely be potentially Division 3 early alpha stuff, if that's even happening. I don't see any reason for them to still be touching Division 2. The Division 2's on a wrap. like I think that's something we need to more and more just accept. Not any of the people who asked questions today, but there was someone who posted something in response to me saying like, oh, Division 2 was all about PvE. That means Division 3 is going to be all about PvP. And like comments like that just make me want to just rip my hair out, because it's like, no, like if you meet someone and they only this is going to be an awful comparison no matter what I say. They only like Mountain Dew. And every time you see them, they're drinking Mountain Dew. And every time they talk about pop, they talk about Mountain Dew. There's no reason for you to say, man, they sure talk about Mountain Dew a lot. I wonder if that means they're actually going to start becoming a big fan of Pepsi. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's obvious, at least on Massive's side, where they fall, in the content that they're focused on. It's obviously PvE. We saw a pretty big focus on PvP in Division 1. We saw a significant drop of focus on PvP in Division 2. I mean, if you're just looking at the averages, I would say that there's a chance that Division 3 has very little focus on PvP, if any, potentially. I don't know if you could ever truly delete PvP from the franchise. I think if they did, it would get rid of some of the worst parts of the community. But I also know people who are great who would be pretty disappointed in that. So I don't really want PvP to be deleted from the franchise. I think it does get something out of that. Or it could if it was appropriately utilized, which I don't think it currently is. But I've just seen so many times that these people who just make up their own interpretations of everything, like that simple idea of saying like, man, they sure focused on PvE a lot for Division 2. That must mean they're going to focus on Division 3 PvP. Like, that doesn't make sense. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. During a stream I had doing the manhunt yesterday, there was also someone who mentioned that like another one of these like small YouTubers who's just constantly making shit up posted a video saying like, I have evidence that they're going to do a year 3 of Division 2 and it's going to be PvP focused or some bullshit. Like, that's not true. like these are the same people who, I've called out before, who just like made up PTS emails and NDA'd emails and who just made shit up and lied. No one gave a shit because honestly, they're too small to care about. Even though I did get super annoyed, I saw one of them get suggested on the Ubisoft Connect app for Division 2. And I just wanted to I had an aneurysm. I was like, you guys should not be promoting that person. They are lying and they are dishonest, and they make even shitty quality videos. My videos suck. Let me be very clear. I have 1,300 follower subs on Twitter or on YouTube. That's all I've had for the last year and a half, and I get 50 to 100 views on my videos. Every now and then I get a couple thousand if it's the right type of video, but I suck. I also don't try. But there's a lot of misinformation getting put out there by a lot of these little tiny guys trying to make it or whatever, which in its own is bizarre, because if you're on YouTube and you're trying to make it and get and grow and stuff, you should not be making Division 2 content. You can maybe make it part of your repertoire, if you want to do a Division video here and there, but you should be doing videos on much more relevant games. And especially if you're trying to do PvP montages and stuff, the Division is not the game. You are barking up the wrong tree, at least in my opinion. Hey, maybe they're doing better than me. Maybe they know something I don't. So I don't think that banner change for Red Storm means anything significant, but I could be wrong. I will say it is weird because they've distanced themselves pretty heavily from Division. So it is kind of a weird thing for them to post. So who knows? I suspect we will find out in a few months. Okay, we will wrap this thing up with some content updates. So the Extra Life fundraiser I did raised $260, which is super awesome. That was $10 more than my requirement of $250 to do a big giveaway of some Division swag I've found over the years. I am sorry that I haven't picked that winner yet. With my mom passing away and stuff like that, I got a little distracted. So I will try to take care of that this week and notify the winner that they won and that they will have some stuff headed their way. I am looking to start making some videos, kind of looking back at Division 1, kind of dissecting Division 2 as it stands now, and how I think maybe some of those things may impact a Division 3, and how some things I would like to see, some things I would like to not see again, maybe some new things. There's definitely stuff from Division 1 that I would like to see in a Division 3. There's definitely a lot of stuff of Division 2 I would like to see, and there's definitely stuff from both I would like to never see again. I did make a Twitter post last week or recently about showing one of the scarves on Division 1 and 2, and it's the same scarf technically, but the one on Division 2 just looks god awful. It looks really bad. I may have even talked about this last week, but and then comparing it to Division 1, where it looks really nice. I think there's a long story behind all that. I think something catastrophic happened with the character models in Division 2, and they just ran out of time to fix things, but maybe that's a story for a different day. The final thing is that next week my content may be a bit more inconsistent due to Thanksgiving. Bay Diesel's going to be home. Her school is actually going to do a short-term return to NTI, to teaching from home. So that may switch up my schedule a bit. So I may be a bit less consistent, or even less consistent than I already am in the coming couple weeks, and really for the rest of the year, because then we have Christmas that comes right up. So we'll see. And that's what I have. So I am Bardon Diesel on Twitch, where I stream a few times a week. Check me out there. On Twitter, you can catch me at Bardon Diesel or at the EchoCast. If you want some cool EchoCast or Bardon Diesel merch, check out designbyhumans.com/shop/Bardon Diesel. That's all I have. So until next time.